So let's talk about the 4 emotions that keep you trauma bonded and stuck. Let's make this a game. Before I say them, drop them in the comments. If this was a test, I'd give you partial credit if you got some of them. Most of you don't have to dig too deep to find them. Most of you could probably close your eyes and find the answer of the 4 emotions that keep you trauma bonded because you feel them every day. And these 4 emotions are why you find it difficult to get out of a relationship, if you're in a narcissistic relationship, even if it's family, that you know is not good for you, and why you make excuses, and why, especially if it was a family relationship that started in childhood, you find that you're often quite stuck in your life, even years out. So ready? These are the 4 tormenting voices you hear all the time. You can pause it, put your answer in the comments, see if you're right. Ready? They're guilt, grief, pity, and shame. Okay, guilt, grief, pity, and shame. We almost never just feel one of these, and each one magnifies the other, right? You may feel guilty for thinking someone close to you is narcissistic, or because they did something nice for you last week. You may feel grief at the lack of a healthy childhood, or lack of having, your marriage not having been healthy. You may feel an overarching sense of shame, almost a sense of damage or isolation at the confusion and messiness of your relationship. And this can be worse if you are in a relationship with a grandiose narcissist that people like, or a communal narcissist that's viewed as a savior or a pillar of the community, or a self-righteous narcissist that people view as an ultra-moral, sort of straight and narrow kind of person. And of course, then there's pity, especially if you're in a relationship with a sad, vulnerable, narcissistic person who is socially awkward and nothing seems to work out for them and is anxious. You feel bad for them. Almost every survivor I know feels all 4 of these every day. Sometimes you may not feel the pity, especially if you're in a relationship with a more malignant or slick, grandiose narcissist. But even then, if the narcissistic person you're in a relationship with, whatever the nature of the relationship is, has a complicated or traumatic backstory, or they were abused or neglected as a child, or you can see that their parent or their parents was every bit as bad as them or even worse, then you may feel sorry for them. But during the Hoover or the crocodile tears that the narcissistic person may sometimes cry to get you back, or when you decide to leave or set a boundary, those can also pull for pity. Now, these 4 emotions are tricky because they're real. You feel them, they're real. You feel these things. But it's the stuff that comes before them, especially how distorted our thoughts get and the confusing and manipulative behavior in these relationships that are the issue. Guilt and shame go hand in hand. You don't have one without the other. Guilt is personal. It's the perception that you did something wrong or bad. Shame is that sort of public sense of being seen as bad. The guilt is a tough one because in most cases, people in narcissistic relationships are experiencing lots of harm, but not harming the other person, but are being told that they're harming the other person. Remember DARVO? Deny, attack, reverse victim offender. When the narcissistic person denies doing something bad that they did, then attacks you and then plays victim. Thank you, Dr. Jennifer Fried, for that one. That's the dance. Unless you know what you are up against, it is so easy to get pulled into the backflow of the narcissistic person playing victim. Any normal relationship thing you do, express a need or an opinion or a belief or set a boundary or attempt to communicate a feeling, you're told that you're bad or you're wrong or you're selfish or you're entitled or you're demanding. So, if you're not narcissistic, then you feel guilty. Guilt is an origin emotion for children who grew up with narcissistic parents. It may be one of the early emotions the child recalls experiencing because the child from an early age is sensing that they're doing something wrong, that they're an inconvenience, that they're a financial drag, that they need to keep quiet, that they aren't being helpful, that they can't fix the situation around them. So the child has an early sense of guilt that propels them through childhood. You know it. Many of you lived it. These are children who are at risk of becoming perfectionistic or anxious or distracted or just sad because they always feel guilty and bad and always try to be better and more and enough. It doesn't work because the narcissistic parent is never satisfied and the child is doomed to a constant sense of guilt that they take into adulthood like an effed up inheritance. And the guilt underlies that sense that there is something wrong with you, right? Guilt, I did something wrong, right? That there's something wrong with you or your family, or as you get older with your relationship. Other people's families seem more normal when you grow up in a narcissistic family. You may not feel as tense or on edge with other people's families, but you may still feel icky when you're with other people's families because of that sense of shame. In adulthood, it's the same. You may feel shame because you know you are staying in a relationship with someone who yells or cheats or lies, even if the world doesn't know it, and especially if the world does. The harmed person in the narcissistic relationship takes on the entire burden of shame and guilt for the relationship, and it is the primary brick of the trauma bond. It can start to get to the as good as it gets mentality, where many survivors take the justification to a point where they believe that, well, maybe I'm also part of the problem, or maybe I'm being too high-minded to think that this relationship can get better. And so there's a risk that you remain sort of resigned to that idea of maybe this is as good as it gets, which can also foster a sense of isolation. The guilt in particular can drive the pity. The pity is a unique piece of the narcissistic relationship because they are so manipulative and controlling and power-driven. We may think, why would we pity someone who has those qualities? Well, it's all that victim stuff again. The shifting back to victimhood when things don't go the narcissistic person's way, especially if empathy is your jam and you're heavy in it. The narcissistic person's victimhood, sulking, crying, or their laundry list of the things that they have done for you, or whatever it is, may leave you feeling bad for them. And that's pity. Interestingly, it's not just performative. There is actually something kind of pitiful about narcissistic people. The insecurity, the always trying to pump themselves up, the every so often seeming like a lost child. There are flashes of that. And it can also make things seem worse. Again, this is majorly magnified when you're dealing with vulnerable narcissistic folks. You may see, for example, the aging narcissistic parent, perhaps maybe trying to get something right, but now, after all these years, it looks pathetic, and so you pity them. Pity is a very difficult emotion for anyone who's empathic and in one of these relationships, because it puts you in that caregiving rescuer role. And much like trying to save an injured porcupine, you may feel bad for the creature, but you are going to get stuck by their quills. But the pity also gives us a tiny bit of power, interestingly, for a minute in a relationship where we feel very little power most of the time. Because when we feel pity and want to try to make them feel better, it's sort of a chance for us to do something. But this is where your ick list becomes so important, because you have to use them as an antidote and a reminder of all the times this person was actually unkind and harmful. And if you do pity them and help them out, ultimately, you're going to bring out their shame and then their rage. But then there's your grief, this chronic sense of loss that is multiplied by other emotions. When we're harmed by someone, we lose something, and we mourn that. And it may take a minute for us to realize that it is grief and loss that we're struggling with. You may grieve things like a childhood that you can't have back. You may grieve a sense of self that is taking a minute to develop. You may grieve your own children's childhoods. And above all, you will grieve the vast amounts of time you spent on these relationships. It can set up the good money, bad money, sunk cost part of the trauma bonded experience too. You already put so much into it. Maybe it can change. I can focus on the good parts. The grief slows us down. It mutes us. And since there is no real mourning ritual for people who go through toxic relationships, there's no, for example, funeral. There's no place to put a pin in it. Nobody's going to bring you a casserole. You're really going to be struggling with this grief alone. But it's not just one of these emotions operating, it's all four. And so when you scratch your head and say, what's wrong with me? Why can't I end this? Why can't I break up with them? Why can't I set a boundary or disengage or even go no contact? Dig into these feelings. They are the foundation and bedrock of the trauma-bonded experience. And they are uncomfortable feelings too. We don't like uncomfortable feelings. And to break the tension, we can make the excuses and justifications that allow us to take the blame and in a way feel in a little bit of control by making ourselves the bad ones. And while that doesn't feel good either, like I said, it can break the uncomfortable tension of the cognitive dissonance, which is the constant vibe of these relationships. 4 emotions plus a lot of confusion equals being stuck. It is the most complicated, simple equation of these relationships. Hope that was helpful, and thanks again.